Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast, Friday, December the 15th. Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan. Got a preview for you today of Giants versus Saints. You guys like best buds over there again?
Well, after Jeff started encroaching on my space, I decided not, to give into the holiday cheer and not dump him in a trash can or something.
Like ankle socks with pants is the new look, I guess.
I like that you've gone to leg crossing. I was the only leg crosser for a while.
You calling yourself a trendsetter, man?
Yeah, pioneer.
I kind of go back and forth, so I'm wearing the Tottenham hoodie today, though. It's Casual Friday inside the Saints Insider studio. Yeah, I didn't even realize I had it still on until we started filming.
I like that hoodie.
Look, Saints 6-7 play the Giants on Sunday. Rod, is this game a must-win? We said last week that it was, and they won that game against Carolina. Is this
coming
week
in hot right off the bat?
This is a must-win, especially, I kind of talked about it. They play the Rams in 4 days, and I don't think they're going to go to L.A. and win, so I think they do have to get this one. So I'm looking forward to seeing these two quarterbacks that both fan bases just are so crazy about.
Is there a difference? Like Tommy DeVito, his expectations were so low, and he's exceeding them by so much. And then Derek Carr, it's almost the opposite. But what do you guys say? Is this? You almost have to look at this in a 2-game pack because they play the Rams so close behind this. They got to win one of them, and this is clearly the easier of the two.
Yeah. But I think at this stage of the season, just considering what's in front of them and their chances of actually making something positive out of the season, I think everything is a must-win game at this point. It absolutely is. But so is the Rams game, and so is the Tampa game, especially, which we're probably going to get into. And then Week 18 against the Falcons, that it could be that they have to win that game to get in. I think all of them at this point are equally important because of how frustrating everything's been for the first 13 games into the season now.
Yeah.
They've put themselves in this position where every game is a must-win game.
It's the most important game because it's the next game.
Ooh, Coach Rod.
We are chopping wood over here.
Are you auditioning?
Dunk's going to be carrying the water. I'll chop the wood.
Are you auditioning to be the Chargers' next head coach with that line?
No.
1-0. Got to go 1-0.
1-0, yeah.
Dunk, any differing opinion from you on that?
No, look, I think looking at the finishing stretch, 4-game stretch, I think whichever of these three teams tied right now can win 3 is going to win the division. And I don't know if any of them are going to win 3, though. That's just, I think, 2-2. I think we could end up very, very realistically with everybody tied.
3-1 probably gets it done. 3-1 may get you a wild card, too. I mean, there's 5, 6, and 7 teams, and then Minnesota, I think, is 7 and 6 in the NFC.
If the Saints go 3-1, their chances of getting a wild card are like 35% as of right now. Obviously, that can change depending on the outcomes of this weekend and the next weekend, but it's a possibility for them to get into the playoffs without clinching the division. But really, the only realistic possibility of that happening is if they go 2-0 the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yes,
2-0 the next 5 days. If we're being
correct,
that's
if they go 3-1 though. I mean that means they won 4 out of the last 5 games, which is you got to like your chances of that.
And that's hard to realistically believe they can do.
Right.
I mean, I pointed out they've won 2 in a row. That's the longest winning streak they've had. Last year they won 3 in a row right at the very end.
Toward the end, yeah.
And no other team in the divisions won more than 2 games in a row in 2
NFC
years.
South, baby, let's go.
They haven't gotten hot, right? Like they've won a couple in a row a couple times this year, but they've never felt like, hey, 3 weeks in a row we're playing well. They just need to get hot. I don't know if that's possible.
Well, I mean, like you look at their. I mean, let's just be real. Let's look at their wins this year. They're against the worst teams in football.
That's right.
So they haven't gotten hot because they've only beaten the teams they are supposed to beat, and they've lost a couple of those games too. So if they're going to do it, now's the time. And look, none of these teams that are left on their schedule have a winning record. All right, at this point, 3, 6, and 7 teams and a 5 and 8 team. If you're going to do it, now's the time to do it.
That's right. And the team that is hot is the New York Giants. They've won 3 in a row. coming in here. So let's dig into the matchup. But before we do, want to let you know that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Also encourage everybody to subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. If you're already subscribed, hit the thumbs up for us. If you're on podcasts, leave us a review. We appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. All right, Saints Giants. Saints are 6-point favorites at Caesar Sportsbook. Over under is 39. Do you find that funny? What's
Nothing. No comment.
you have to tell
I find
me.
the 6 points kind of funny. I think that's a
6
pretty
points is
big
too much.
spread for
Yeah.
How did that happen? You're the line guy. I think early in the week it was 4 points. Now it's 6.
It's awesome. It was 6, and then it went down to like 4.5, and now it's back to 6.
How does that happen?
So the Giants, if you look at what's called market ratings, which is essentially
Oh God, here we go.
what the market tells us each team is based on what the closing point spread is every week. Okay, I'm going to put on my green visor and sit at the sports book here smoking a cigar.
We need to actually get you one of those green visors for the show.
The Giants are the second lowest team in the NFL, ahead of only the Panthers. And that has not changed despite a 3-game winning streak. So I guess the question is, how much stock do you put in the Giants beating the Packers? And this maybe we start here, because before that, their victories, I think Matt Paris mentioned this on Wednesday, their victories other than Green Bay on Monday night were against the Commanders twice, against the Cardinals early in the year when Daniel Jones was still playing, and against the New England Patriots. So they have not, you talk about the Saints not beating anybody. The Giants really had not beat anybody until Monday night. So now they're on a short week. So how much do you improve the Giants' stock based on that game?
Look, I think beating Green Bay, correct me, I know you know Green Bay probably better than any of us, being a Wisconsin native, but hadn't they been playing better? Weren't they?
They had.
Yeah, Green Bay had a couple wins against teams you'd expect to be playoff teams. They were kind of going in hot. I think they were one of the hotter teams in the NFC going into that matchup. Mm-hmm. So, it was impressive for sure. I think their defense did a really nice job on Jordan Love, who's been playing great.
Right.
And DeVito made plays. All that being said, though, I think you see this from time to time in the NFL. Tommy DeVito is still a rookie quarterback without very many skins in the wall, and he's really, I think they have benefited from that opportunistic defense to kind of bail him out a couple times. Again, this is kind of going back to what we said earlier in the week. If the Saints, for once in this 2023 season, could actually get off to a fast start, make the Giants play from behind, I think that really bodes well for them if they're able to actually do that. Because I don't trust Tommy DeVito and those Giants weapons, even with Darren Waller in the mix, against that Saints secondary if they can't also sprinkle in some Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start when the Saints have the ball, like we always do. A lot of discussion around Derek Carr this week. Needs to play better. Giants blitz heavy. We talked about that on Wednesday. I think back to the Vikings game, Rod, which was the other kind of really blitz heavy team that the Saints played. The Vikings, I think, are number 1 in the NFL in blitz rate. The Giants are number 2. The plan in that game early appeared to be to throw a lot of passes underneath. They targeted Michael Thomas twice on the first 3 plays, and he got hurt in that game, and then he left. Saints fell way behind. Then Derek Carr got hurt, and everything kind of went out the window as far as a game plan. But I have to imagine that's going to be the plan again. Is the Giants are going to blitz and play this cover 2 shell, just pepper everything underneath and move your way down the field.
I think so, but I also think that the Giants are so bad defending the run. I think the Saints are going to have to just try to run the ball first. That would be my game plan going into it, because both of these teams really struggle stopping the run, and I think the Saints need to try to take advantage of it. I think we may see a lot of Alvin Kamara and even Taysom if he's playing. So that would be my way of attacking the Giants.
Here's the stat I want to bring up, and I noticed this week. If you look at Pro Football Reference and look at Derek Carr's splits, when he's getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less, which is their cutoff, he has a 73 or 74% completion rate. He has a 99 passer rating, something like that. His completion percentage goes down 17 points, and his quarterback rating goes down 14 points when he holds onto the ball longer. So he has been effective this year when they're operating that rhythm passing game, when he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly, when they're doing quick game short passes. As long as that's not like as long as it's not like short passes that are long developing, which I think has been the case sometimes with him this year, where he holds onto the ball a hair too long and he doesn't see anything he likes, and then the next thing you know, it's like a dump off that gets tackled immediately, and it's like a 4-yard gain. I think if they can figure out some way to just to grab it, go, quick rhythm passing game, I think that could be successful this week.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. That's really good information, because I think we've all seen this watching the Saints games where he's back there, he's kind of on his tiptoes.
We're always like looking at each other like,
and we're like, what's he doing? And
Never ends
it
well.
does bring into question a little bit is what's his processing level like? I mean, that was one of the things that in training camp I was impressed with. Again, it's training camp, it's practice, it's going against your own teammates. But, man, the ball came out quick. It was pretty decisive. And it just changed once the game started. And it's been an issue all season long. And it was really an issue last week against Carolina. Now, Carolina, I would say, I think their defense now is like 4th in the league. They've gotten healthy, so they're much better defensively than they were early in the season. But having said that, we've seen it happen over and over again. And you have to think that's what the Giants are going to try and do, is confuse him, create a little bit of doubt in his mind where he holds the ball, and potentially leads to a turnover here. I think this game could be kind of high scoring, because I think there could be some mistakes, both sides, because of the aggressive nature of the defense.
Yeah. Both defenses are really really good at forcing turnovers, and the Giants especially lately. I am curious to see what Taysom Hill's role is going to be this week, assuming he plays. He's been back in practice. He was really on kind of a heater before he got hurt, and he had to miss last week's game. Is he feeling up to being a guy who can give you 10 or 11 or 12 touches? Like, I think he could be really important in this week's game.
Quick word on the injury report, because Taysom Hill's been back in practice. Rashid Shaheed's been back at practice.
And Rashid has basically already said he's planning on playing too.
Do we think that's the case for Taysom as well?
I think so. Yeah, I would be surprised if he doesn't play.
What about Chris Olave, who's missed practice the last 2 days?
Yeah, like as usual, the disclaimer: we're recording this Friday morning before we go see practice. He wasn't at practice on Wednesday or Thursday. I'd be, just based on their history, I'd be kind of surprised if he played. Maybe he goes out there and practices limited today, and he's questionable on the injury report. Maybe he doesn't practice at all, and he's questionable, because they seem to be a little bit more comfortable doing that than they have been in years past. But I'd be surprised about Olave if he was out there.
And what's his injury?
He's got an ankle injury.
Okay.
And remember last week, I mean, he hasn't practiced in more than a week. Because last week he missed the last 2 practices with an illness. That illness was still bugging him on game day. He wasn't 100% that day. So, it's kind of tough to say with him, because we just haven't seen him.
Could have the Chris Olave flu game. I guess not. That would have been
last week.
That was last week.
He had a touchdown, but not much else.
Yeah. All right. So, maybe weapons are limited. You mentioned the running game, Rod, which the Saints ran for like 70-some yards against the Panthers in the first quarter, plus one play of the second quarter, which was a touchdown, Alvin Kamara touchdown run last week. And then they kind of abandoned it a little bit. And Taysom wasn't there, but I was really surprised at how low that run rate was the last 3 quarters of the game, especially with the lead.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, and I just think that, as I said earlier, I just think this is a game where they need to try to establish that early, and if you can do that, I think that's the Giants' weakness, and I think the Saints can just exploit it early in this game and just kind of get something going, and not have to have Derek Carr trying to go out and win the game. I think they'll be in good shape.
Yeah. All right. Switch things when the Giants have the ball. I know we're all waiting to talk about Tommy Cutlets.
Great nickname.
Yeah.
Great nickname.
It's really
what people don't know
story.
is I used to call Jeffy Cutlets.
Kind of copied
just because of his proclivity on the road to ask for chicken cutlets at the restaurant, but he asked me to stop doing that, and then especially once Tommy got the nickname.
So Tommy DeVito ripped off
Jeffy
Jeff Duncan.
Cutlets?
Pretty true, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeffrey. Kind of Jeffrey.
No,
Jeffrey
Jeffy Cutlets.
Maybe that was the Jeff wanted the more stately Jeffrey, and you called him Jeffy, and he got upset.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It goes back to the Duncan dunk thing.
Yeah.
We're on that again. No, I'm kind of curious to see. Okay, we know we have a large Italian American population in New Orleans. I mean, right? They have the huge parade, very active organization. What do you do if you're part of the Italian American Army in New Orleans? Do you pull for Tommy DeVito, or are you pulling for the Saints? You torn?
As somebody who's not Italian and can't understand those things, I would imagine they'd be pulling for the Saints, but I don't know.
I don't know. I'm telling you, man, it's pretty strong. I mean, how many people is he going to bring down? I'm curious. I think they had like 300 people up at the last game on the Monday night game. I'm curious. I'm fascinated by this whole storyline. It's the biggest story in the league right now. One of the biggest.
I do think that there's a part of this, short week.
Do you think there's a part of this?
Yeah, I'm not actually doing that. Those who are listening and not watching are going to be really confused.
Yeah.
We're doing the Tommy DeVito. How do you even describe the Tommy DeVito?
I just call it the chef's
gesture?
kiss hands.
The chef. Okay, so you're like kissing and
Yeah,
It
but
means a lot of things.
it means a lot of things. Yeah,
right.
gabagool.
Short week. Tommy DeVito's NFC Player of the Week. Like, everybody is singing his praises. Like I mentioned before, they beat one good team. Now they got to come to New Orleans. Like, it does feel like a spot. Forget about what the Saints are and what they can do, but it just feels like a spot on the Giants side where this could all come crashing down.
Yeah, and we'll get to our predictions, and that's sort of what I was related to. But you mentioned them beating one good team. That's probably one good team more than the Saints have beat this year, right?
And I mean,
Well, they
are the
beat the
Packers
Colts.
a good
They beat
team?
the
The
Colts.
Colts win's
Yeah.
looking better.
The Packers are 6-7. Like, let's not get carried away with that win either.
Well, the Saints lost to the Packers.
They
Right.
did.
Saints blew an 18-0 lead against the Packers. Oh, I think you're right though. Like, you see these moments all the time where a guy has a couple okay games, like okay they won, and then he has the one big one. Everybody's like, whoa, a star is born, and then the
Josh
phrase,
Dobbs.
yeah, Josh Dobbs. Did it against the Saints too, but that's the phrase everybody turns to in this time. It's like when is he going to turn into a pumpkin? Much like Tyson Bagent did in that fourth quarter against the Saints. We turned the ball over about 25 times in the fourth quarter alone.
And like Josh Dobbs did against the Raiders last week.
Dobbs even in
And
that,
the Bears,
in that
yeah.
second half against the Saints, he tore them to shreds for the first half and then had absolutely nothing going on the second half. I just think that, who knows? I mean, Tommy DeVito might go out there and shine even more this week, and maybe he's the next big thing in New York. And I could be totally wrong, but I think the more likely thing, especially against Dennis Allen, who has a history of rattling these young quarterbacks. I feel like as long as the Saints can get out of this, or can avoid this situation where he's able to lean on Saquon and all that, they can make them put the game in his hands. I feel pretty confident about this Saints defense against that Giants offense.
He did run for 71 yards last week.
Yeah,
he will take off and run.
That has
That's
been
a
a
thing.
problem. It was another Tyson Bagent thing. He ran for 70 yards against the Saints. They have a real hard time with guys who can move back there. I just think though that at some point if he's going to be forced into this drop back game, they're gonna have some success against him.
Getting a good tight end back, though, I think that.
Yeah, see, this is one of the things though that I just don't like. The Saints have had some awful games against tight ends this year. Darren Waller killed them the last time they played. I think it was 2020, week 2. He had 12 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. All that being said, the Saints got killed by T.J. Hawkinson when they were worried about Jordan Addison. The Saints got killed by Sam Laporta when they're worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Who else on this Giants receiving core are you worried about?
Wandale Robinson would be the
Robinson?
one guy,
Yeah.
but he's not at that level.
Yeah, he's not somebody you have to shift coverage toward. I think they're gonna make Waller the focal point of their pass defense. They should. So I don't think. I think I'd be really surprised, and I'd have some serious questions for the Saints coaching staff if Waller goes out there and kills him.
He is coming back from injury, so we don't know what sort of shape he'll be in either. But I think that is something the Saints have to look at, as well as Saquon Barkley, Jeff. Because we haven't really talked about him, but he's obviously the number one weapon you think of when you think of the Giants.
Yeah, he's an elite player. I think still, even after the injury, we saw him here a few years ago, kind of have two big, huge plays in that game and kind of almost win the game. Daniel Jones had a huge game, and he ran all over the Saints, if I remember.
Yeah, that was predictable
correctly.
too. Yeah,
But I think it starts with them shutting down the run. The Saints have been devoting more second-level pressure to try and generate some pass rush. I do think that leaves them a little more exposed on the back end, but their cornerback play has been so good, even without Lattimore. I really think that's – if you had to ask me right now, I know we're going to talk about the division later, but the one aspect the Saints have, their pass defense is elite, and it's the one thing in the whole division, I think, that's elite. Everything else is kind of fair to middling, but the Saints' pass coverage has just been elite. And I have to say, you have to give them credit, not only the coaching staff, but the players themselves. This is what's happened in the league. Cornerback play, I think next to quarterback, the cornerback is the most important position, even more so than an elite edge rusher, because everyone's getting the ball out so quick. Quarterbacks are mobile now. They can buy time. So you really have to be able to hold up on the back end, and we've seen it over and over every week, even with Ike Yatem out there or Paulson Adebo's emerged this year. They have depth at the cornerback position that other teams in the league, I think, envy. And it's this week, like Luke said, there's no elite receiver to worry about. So you got to shut down. You got to pay attention to Waller and Barkley, and I think they can lock this team down.
And try not to let Tommy Cutlets run for 110 on you.
Oh, man. If he does that, you talk about the hype machine will really go into overdrive if he does something like that.
Yeah.
A quick word on special teams, kind of our token mention of special teams. Jeff, you tweeted this out during the game on Sunday. Blake Grupe's missed 2 field goals less than 30 yards, which is shorter than an extra point. The rest of the kickers combined in the NFL have missed 2 field goals shorter than 30 yards. So at some point, I know they want to give him leash. Obviously, it's getting late in the year. He's probably their guy for the rest of the year. You get the feeling we've only had one game all year come down to a kick, and he missed it. At some point, they're going to need Blake Grupe to come through.
Yeah, look, I think he's kicked well, except for these glaring gaffes. And I think DA said this week, right, that it was the operation wasn't good. Of course,
I don't think the snap was very good on that field goal.
Right, and even the hold, it was a little late, I think, is what they said on the broadcast. But I don't know. I'm not ready to give up on him. But I mean, the numbers are the numbers. We're so used to it being automatic, especially in the dome where the conditions are perfect. Maybe the groins affected him. I noticed his kickoffs now are not quite as deep, and they're playing more to like him getting elevation on his kicks and using coverage, and the Saints have done well in that regard. But I agree with you in that the way this team's built, they're built to win with defense and special teams. They're not a juggernaut offensively, so you have to have good kicking or you're going to lose a lot of these one-score games, and that's come back to haunt the Saints.
Yeah, and I think this is, to me, that's – look, I think Blake is going to be fine. I think he's going to have a nice career. I think he's obviously talented. This is something that you go into the season with the understanding that there's going to be some of these growing pains and some of these moments where you're scratching your head. The question is, if you're this Saints team that clearly was built with the idea of being a contending team, like why are you putting yourself in that position? Yeah. I think that's more of the question for me. I don't think it's a question of whether Blake Grupe is going to be an NFL kicker, or even here in New Orleans. I think they're doing the right thing sticking by him now that they chose him in August. The question is really about why'd you choose him with the knowing full well that these rookie specialists, and this is something they've talked about all season, they're going to go through these
what
swings.
Was it, $2 million and a 7th-round draft pick you essentially saved and or earned for getting rid of Will Lutz?
Yeah, but I was told they made the decision based off performance,
which kind of flies into what you're saying. Like, why? That's a strange decision.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think Will struggled a little bit in training camp, and I think probably the change of scenery did him some good. I think he was kind of in his head a little bit here, but still, it's it was a curious decision at the time, and it's it's reared its head a couple times this year.
And everything gets magnified, right?
That's right.
When you're going bad like this, or
you're
when
6 and 7, and
I mean, if Blake Grupe's on the Cowboys, no one's talking about him, right?
Except everybody's talking about the Cowboys.
The Cowboys kicker is phenomenal, Brandon Aubrey.
I'm just saying, like if you're killing teams, if they're on he's on the 2011 Saints, no one cares.
Well, even if he just makes those 2 29-yarders, which number one, they probably beat Houston if he makes the first one. So make him 7-6 instead of 6-7. And then everything else he's missed has been sort of, okay, he missed a 48-yarder, he missed a 52-yarder.
Right, it happens.
That's going to happen, and his percentage is still okay. So it's really these short ones. One other note on special teams, Rod. Rashid Shaheed may be coming back. Lynn Bowden's done a pretty good job returning kicks. I would be terribly surprised if he's still back there given Shaheed's injury this week.
Yeah, I mean, Rashid was dealing with a hamstring, so I mean that's kind of one of those
quad. Yeah,
I mean, quad. I mean that's just one of those injuries that, maybe you save them because you got to, again, it's a short week. You got to play the Rams again, so I don't know who they use back there. I think Bowden's been fine.
The only concern I have about that is like security on the catch. We haven't seen it during the game, but like it was a thing during training camp where he was good to drop one of those pretty much every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's tough catching punts in the dome.
Yeah,
it is.
Talk to any in return guy. It's tough. I mean, there's lights and it's a thing. But I agree with Luke. I mean, we've seen him be a little unsure compared to Shaheed. And I wonder a little bit sometimes if Shaheed. I mean, early in his career right now, he's obviously got a lot of potential, but he does get nicked up a lot. He's not a big guy, and that's this big man's game. We're going to be dealing with this throughout his career because it's become a recurring thing.
All right, quick note on the division. We mentioned this before, but we'll just show the standings. 3-way tie at 6-7. Somebody's got to win this thing. The Saints don't win any of the tiebreakers. I will say I think this sets up pretty well for them if they can win Sunday, because then you get the Rams game where it doesn't kind of become that must win. And if there are guys banged up or Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, who would be eligible to return, you don't have to rush them back necessarily. You can give them the extra time. You have the mini bye going into those two division games at the end. So in a way, it sets up well for the Saints, at least as well as they could hope at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, let's just be clear about this. Like we just talked about how all these games are must-win games for the Saints, but those two division games are really must-win games.
Those are the ones they got to focus on.
Especially if you lose that Bucs game, I mean, you can basically just kiss the division goodbye, right? Because they got Carolina in Week 18.
Let's talk about that, because you mentioned that in your story on NOLA.com this week about playoff scenarios. Like the Saints' playoff percentages, if they lose to Tampa Bay, it's like infinitesimal, goes way down.
Yeah, just because of that Week 18 game, you basically chalk that up as a win for Tampa. And I mean, even if like the Saints split, right, these next two games, and the Bucs go 0-2, and then they lose to the Bucs, they basically have no shot at making the playoffs.
They would need to beat the Falcons and have the Bucs lose to the Panthers.
Yeah. Right. You're basically counting on the Panthers to beat the Bucs.
Right.
In Week 18 when they're playing out the string.
Could Carolina help the Saints either this week or that last week?
Come on, man.
I mean, you can't count on it.
Come on. I mean, like
you watched Carolina last week, man.
Look, crazy stuff happens, especially when we're talking about mediocre teams. Like you see teams like lose games. Like what was it? A couple of years? It was last year. The number one pick got decided late in the season because
the Texans beat somebody. Yeah.
It happens. Yeah. Didn't the Jags or somebody lose to the Colts or something?
No, it was the year Trevor Lawrence was drafted. I think the Jets were going into like week 17 or 18 with the number one pick, and then they won.
Right.
And then they lost out on Trevor Lawrence, and they picked Zach Wilson.
And
I mean, crazy stuff happens. Like, but you can't possibly count.
You can't count on it. No, for sure. But it wouldn't surprise me the way this year's gone if the Panthers somehow win that game in Week 18. Or I mean, they only lost to the Bucs in Tampa by 3 2 weeks ago. So
because
it's not like
and they gave the Saints trouble all last week up until the last 6-7 minutes of the game.
I think it's fascinating because if you look at the schedules of the three contenders here, really every game's like a 50-50 game. So there's just no way to predict what's going to happen. It's going to be fascinating. I mean, literally, one team could win out. They could win, and it wouldn't shock anybody, but they just have no history or track record of doing it. But none of these games, in my opinion, are unwinnable, and all of them, you could lose every one of them. So it's how this plays out. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, it could come down to that last week, and the Saints could get help by the Panthers winning. They could lose to the Falcons or something. I mean, it could happen.
It could absolutely happen. But so no matter what, those last two division games, nothing will be decided before Week 17. I think we can say that with certainty. But having said that, Saints Insider Podcast, time for predictions. Hit the like button for us. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Let's do predictions. We're going to do things a little bit differently. Usually we start with the guy who's not here. I'm going to save Matt's pick for last.
Foreshadowing.
So
It explains why he's not here.
yeah, well, I promise we told him it was his day off before we knew his pick. But I don't, like you're talking about, these are all coin flips. It's kind of weird at this point for any game for all 5 of us to pick the same team. Probably shouldn't happen. So, having said that, Rod, what do you got this week?
Well, this is a game that before the season started and the schedule came out, I thought it was almost like a guaranteed win. I thought, okay, the Saints are going to beat the Giants, but it was kind of a toss-up for me. I think the key for the Saints is going to be get off to a really good start. The Giants are really bad in the first quarter. I think they've been outscored 71-16 in the first quarter. I mean, they are like pathetic in the first quarter. So anyway, I got the Saints winning 20-17.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of skipped over. We had a little keys to the game slide that I skipped over, and one of them was the Saints have only led 3 games after the first quarter this year. 3 out of 13.
Wow.
They've been tied in a bunch.
But this is the kind of team they should.
But
be able to,
if you get off to a fast start, and you force Tommy DeVito to beat you through the air, the other one would of course be turnovers. The Giants in this winning streak, I think, of +8 in takeaways or something.
+9, I think.
+9 in this 3-game winning streak. I mean, just ridiculous. And so that I'll go next, and I've got the Saints winning 24-17. I think you just can't expect that kind of turnover fortune to continue for the Giants. I do think if the Saints can just bully their way out to a lead, kind of like they did last week against Carolina, the Giants are really going to be in dire straits. It could be worse than 24-17, but I just not picking the Saints to blow anybody out at this point, so that's what I went with.
Yeah, I think this game has potential to look a lot like last week's game, where it's just kind of a slog for a big, huge chunk of the game. Then the Saints pull away late. If they can force some unforced errors, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense, but ultimately I picked the Saints 24-23, just because I think the Giants are playing a lot better than I expected them to at this stage of the season. I think they're playing with some confidence. I think the Saints are lacking some confidence right now, but I still think the Saints are a better team, and I do think that it has potential for this game to snowball late, but we'll see if that actually plays out.
What's interesting about that, and I was looking at this as well when I found only 3 first-quarter leads, the Saints haven't really won a game that came down to the final couple of minutes.
Right.
The closest thing would be week 1 against Tennessee, where they had to hang on and get a couple of first downs, but they had the lead and kept it in that game. The first Carolina game ended up 3 points, but they were ahead by 10 and just needed to recover an onside kick. I mean, like they haven't had a scenario where they've had to come up clutch and done it. So at some point, I think they're going to have to do that if they're going to finish this run to to this division title or wild card spot at 9-8.
Like popping one of those like little poppers, like confetti poppers, when they win the division instead of
Oh, they'll celebrate, man.
But that's how I want them to celebrate.
Yeah,
though. Just like one single confetti popper, like the one they pop out during the anthem, like
and a kazoo,
Rockets Red Glare, that sort of thing.
That's
It'd be appropriate for this division.
I agree.
I mean, there's a note I'm writing in my column this weekend about how bad the division is, and there's only been 4 teams that have made the playoffs with a losing record since like the last 40 years, and 2 of them have come from the NFC South, and we could have another one this year. So 3 of the 5,
and another one beat an NFC South team in the playoffs.
I know, and it happens. I mean, like it's happened twice. I think where the team with the losing record is won.
Yeah, you get a home game. I mean,
you get a home game, and anything can happen, as the Saints can attest. Look, I think I'm playing into Luke's scenario here. I think the Saints actually can win this one pretty handily. If they get up on Tommy Cutlets, I think it could turn into Tommy Turnover. And yeah. And
is that another food pun?
It might find its way in my column this weekend.
I do like a good apple turnover.
No, I think they could take advantage. I think the Saints defense is the one elite unit here in the secondary, I should say.
I was going to say.
In the secondary. But if they can't shut down Saquon Barkley, then they could lose. I think it comes down to that because he's talented. I haven't watched him enough after the injury to know, but I mean, that guy was an elite player, and seeing him here a few years ago, he has that big playability, and we saw it even last week in that Panthers game. I think we talked about it on Wednesday. I mean, the Panthers were like one shoe tackle away from another 60, 70-yard explosive run. That would scare me if I'm a Saints fan or if I'm a Saints defensive coordinator, seeing how close some of these runs have been to getting out the door with that guy, with Barkley. So, but I picked 27-16. And
actually have you done for 23-16.
Oh,
but if you want to amend it.
I want to go 27.
You want to go 27?
I think they cover.
He feels better about it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
We've made him
Kool-Aid.
optimistic.
Anybody?
We'll
bring
bring
the Kool-Aid?
if they lose this game, man, we'll bring the Kool-Aid out for next week again.
Right. Spiked Kool-Aid.
Okay, so
I prefer.
we have some similar scores. We had 20-17, 24-17, 27-16, and 24-23. The exception to that would be Matthew Paris, who's not here, and he's got the Giants winning this game 21-17. He said he likes the fact that they're hot. The Saints are obviously still kind of scuffling, having some injury problems, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So he's got the Giants winning 21-17. And look, we all picked the Saints. I don't think anybody's shocked if the Saints cough this one up.
No.
Not
no,
at all.
sir.
After watching them last week scuffle around with Carolina, when Carolina didn't even look like they were trying.
Carolina could have won that game with as badly as they played. You change a couple deep shot they had to Jonathan Mingo, and then the run the long run you were talking about, Miles Sanders, where he gets tackled on the one.
Pulse and a Debo hero ball.
Yeah, not scoring. Or maybe they got a field. Did they even get a field goal that
Yeah,
day?
they got a field
field
goal.
goal out
But that
of it,
sequence, the first and goal at the one, was one of the worst play calling sequences I've ever
They
seen.
had a fourth down where the receiver falls. I think it was Miles Sanders actually falls down when he was wide open for an easy first down.
Yeah.
I mean, just like comedy ball, and they still would have had a chance to win that game. So I don't think any of us are surprised if the Giants win.
Honestly, I'm surprised Rod picked the Saints.
I'm surprised I picked the Saints because I left out of the Superdome last week and I said I'm picking the Giants. And then the Giants played Monday night and I was like, yeah, I'm picking the Giants. And then for whatever reason,
Hey,
Back on, baby. Back on the train.
But from a betting perspective, which I don't bring up because I'm a degenerate, even though I am, but I bring up because this is people who have their money on the line and know what they're talking about. The Saints have back-to-back home games against the two worst teams in the league, in Carolina and the Giants, based on betting market ratings. So if they can't win these two games to stay in the playoff race, then they don't deserve to be in it.
And you know this is a degenerate gambler or whatever. Winning a big emotional home game on Monday night often leads to a flat performance the next week. You go on the road, you're full of yourself a little bit. I mean, let's face it, they're not that good. To me, the intangibles we talk about sometimes, the dynamics that go into a game in a given NFL season, I think could play against the Giants.
All right, this has been.
can I get one
go ahead, Rob.
quick prediction from everybody? Booze this week, yes or no? Will there be booze in the dome?
At some point, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. If if Derek Carr holds the ball one time too long on a third down, which he's going to do, and throws a duck incompletion.
They're going into that game ready, man.
I don't know if
They
there'll
have
be
been.
pregame booze.
No, probably not.
But the first, they'll have to play like a perfect game because the first time something goes wrong, there will be at least some.
If the Giants win this game, I think you need to come next week's pod dressed as Sean Stellato.
I'm in, man. I'm in. I think my son was Indiana Jones for Halloween, so maybe I can borrow something.
It's not the same.
It'd be brown instead of black, but
You need him to go as a soprano character,
yeah.
or Goodfellas.
I know it's not the same. But speaking of next week, we're going to have only one podcast next week. At least that's the plan right now, and we'll probably air it on Tuesday because of the short week leading into the Rams. We're going to record that on Monday, air it on Tuesday. That's the plan right now. We'll let you know if things change. We'll also be on the air for the Saints Insider postgame show 30 minutes after Sunday's game. All these guys will be there. We'll be on the Superdome floor talking about whether the Saints beat the Giants and kept their playoff hopes alive or lost to the Giants and see the sky falling at that point.
Well, if they lose, they're still in it.
They are still in it because
They
those
just have to
division
win
games.
out, pretty much.
But I don't think any optimism would be left if they were to lose to the Giants.
Yeah, it would be devastating, I think, to the psyche of the city. Not that it's not already kind of drained a
The
little
last thread of optimism would be snapped.
bit. Yes.
Yeah. All right, for Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Norman Bell is our man behind the glass. We thank him. Our thanks to Bank Plus, our sponsor. This is the Saints Insider Podcast. We'll see you on Sunday for the postgame show.